We started last week, we ended off the shield last week to explain and the kaini v'lekaya v'saini. So we'll start with this. It says in Sefer Case Hashem Tov that the Hashem Tov once said, what's the reason why we mention in the Shemoneh Esrei and the kaini v'lekaya v'saini? So he says there are two types of people who have a minas Hashem. One type is they believe in Hashem because they're going in the derech of Avisaini, the derech of our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Thereby, the minah is strong. So this is what my father did, and this is what I do. The second type is a minah chakidus. He searched, asked questions, and that's how he got to the minas Hashem. Now, what's the difference between the two types of a minas Hashem? One type is very strong. It's a kabbalah from his parents, and you can't move him. Ask him any question. He has no contradictions. Good times, better times, this is what it is. There's no question asked. But the other one, since it came through Chakira Edrisha, Avada is a minute at this time present is very strong. But as soon as it goes out of his seichel, there are contradictions, then there goes the minas Hashem. Avada, when a person has both, as we finished last week, the vote of the Baruch Tam, first, Ayin Kelekain. You have to be strong and definite, Ayin Kelekain. Once you are strong in the Milah Kabbalis, then Mikelekain, you can start searching. When you have both, says the Baal Shem Tov, this is Elekaini v'lekaya v'saini. Both. A Milah Kabbalis and a Milah Chakidus. To explain this further, my father in several places in the Sefer talks about this topic. I'm talking about a person who had a family, 5 children. He had a large yeshiva, Beis Yaakov, and lost everything. He himself was also sent to Auschwitz after many tsuris and pain. What he did, he made a hole in the train and jumped out in the middle of the woods, and he flew out, and that saved him. And yet, when he came to America, when he came free, most of his drushas was on a minas Hashem. No questions on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Matter of fact, once he said, the last weeks of his life was before Kiddush, he had the becher in his hands, and he said, we say in the Rebbeinu Olumim, after Shulam Aleichem, as a chesed asher sisu mudi, v'ais asher atu used lasos inni in kol b'nai baisi. So he said, Rebbeinu Shalom, ha-chesed sha'ar sisu mudi, the chesed you did with me, everything is chesed. I have no questions. But from now on, as a chesed asher atu used lasos inni, that you're going to do with me, should be in me in kol b'nai baisi. That my family should also recognize that it's chesed. So in Parshas Shemois and Parshas Beshalach, let's quote a piece from Shemois and a piece on Beshalach, how he looked at this Indian of a minah. It says like this. To recognize Hashem Yisburach in Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim is one of two ways. The first way is through Chakira, to search the Seichel, to be choike in his mind, to recognize through moifsim Sheyesh Elokai Echad Ba'olam. Finally, he came to the realization. I agree that that's it, there's Hashem in the world. Through going through this whole introduction to the Chakira and Disha, he says, I found with clear proof, with a mitzvah HaTorah HaKadosh, everything is true. The second derech is through a mina Kabbalas. I have a Kabbalah from Avi Saini. I have no proof, no moifsim, no seichel, nothing. Afal I have chulila, I have no doubt. I believe b'mi she'omar v'hoyu olam. Kach kibam avoisav. Mishnois dor v'dor, generation to generation. Ada v'yisaini Avrom Yitzchak, it goes back to Avrom Yitzchak Yaakov. This is rooted in his heart. And minis amis etzloi b'li shem chakira, without any questions, without any chakira. It says no Sfurim Magdoishim the Ikka Minne is the second way. A Minne Pshita, a Minne Kabbalas. The Mnaisoschen Chodesh 7 quotes, talks about it, and he says the Minne Habul Udam Metzad Chikirusoi, the Minne that does come from searching. Ma'achas Seichel Udam, the Seichel of a person has a gvil, a soif. There's an amount where you could reach, how far your Seichel could go. And that's how far your Minna goes. As soon as you don't have that proof, you have questions, that's where it ends. Ma'ashayin Kain says a Minna that comes from inheritance from parents, Ma'avoisaini. Hashem hid nitzitza oire light betoire saini agdoisha. This minna ein soif burichi. It doesn't have an end. So the minna is ein sof. That cannot be moved. It stays forever. So he brings the chusa to Yosef Yavitz in the Sefer Or HaChaim. He says, witness. His eye saw Ba'avoynesaini Haram in the Gzeides Shmad in Spain, where the Choikim and the Chachumim, those who are the clever ones who went through the Chekiris, they had strong eminah. They didn't withstand all these nisyonis in those difficult days. But the pusher to people, even Nushem, Kaladas, Biltim Melamudam, not learned people, their minna was strong, the Yerisha from their parents. A minna Kabbalas, they stood with their minna, their Makadish Shem Shemayim Barab, without any questions, and they stayed with a minna to the last moment. One piece in Parshas B'Shalach, Kasha is Vaya Yisrael that's the Yordak Doilu Ashuhusu Hashem Mitzrayim. They saw Vayamini. If they saw, what do you mean they believed? They saw it. If you see it clear in front of your eyes, it's not believing. So what's pshat in these two things? Vaya, Vayamini. So it brings this whole discussion again. And he says like this. The Gemara says in Baruch Tafkid Gimel, Rav told Reb Chia, Lo ychezina lai leRebbe, the makabel ol malchus shamayim. I didn't see a Rebbe should be makabel ol malchus shamayim, which means that Rebbeinu HaKodesh started giving a shir before Zman Kriya Shema. So Zman Kriya Shema is about 6, way after 6:10, 6:15, and he gave a shir throughout. And when was he makabel ol malchus shamayim? He couldn't do it before. So the Bechia told him, B'shu shema v'yudov al punov. When he put his hands on his face, it was makabel ol malchus shamayim. The Rosh and the Torah Simis HaMachalef quotes this Gemara, and his guess is Manach Yudaya Einai. He put his hands on his eyes in the middle of the Shia. Baruch Yid Gimel in the base. Even though, what's the pshat in this Gemara? Even though Rebbe understood with the Goydel Sichloi a Minis Elekai Oilam, he understood it clearly. Al Pi Chakira. Yet, when it came this man of Kriya Shema, he put his hands on his eyes. His menimis, eyes is menimis of the Seichel. I close my eyes. I'm not leini Kriya Shema. I'm not bekabel all Malchus Shemayim with Seichel. Therefore, he covered his eyes. To be meramis, I'm not relying on the idea that I have by Kibbutz Olam Malchus Shemayim. I'm Makabel Kabulas Olam Malchus Shemayim B'minik Kabulas without any Chakidas. Kabulas, Mavrom Yitzchak Yaakov. So my father teaches, Vaya Yisrael, as Yoda Doilu, they saw that was a Mina Chakidas, a Mini Bashem, that wasn't enough. They also needed a Mina Kabulas, and that was a Mini Bashem of Moshe Avdai.
The people who are watching this, listening to the share afterwards, for those of us whose parents are stark in Amuna, so we see it as a living example. What if someone comes from parents that aren't such stark in Amuna? How can they start in themselves?
By learning Torah, they see, my Shved once said a story that he once came to the Wiener Shield, and the Björnison Steif was in the Shield, huge Shield, and he was there by himself. It was Pasha Shoftim, and he was learning Baraish's Buru Elakim, touched every word, Baraish's Buru Elakim. Even in Pasha Shoftim, he needed the chizik of learning Baraish's Buru Elakim. So everybody needs that chizik of a minute Hashem. Hemanti ki adaba, he used to say. A minute comes from speaking. So when a person, his parents don't have that strong emina by learning Torah, Torah itself creates a minas Hashem, a huge Torah that we have. And by speaking about and learning minas Hashem, then he develops that strong bond between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Yosef Shol Natanzon, the Divrei Shol says, in Parshas V'eschanan, V'atam advaikem Hashem elokaychem v'chaim kilchem hayoim. He said the difference between a oived Hashem mitzad kabula and a person who is oived Hashem mitzad chakida. So look in the Gemara Chagiga, Daf Yidalid. The Gemara discusses Tanuim who did chakidas in a minas Hashem. Rebbe Kiva was the one who came out b'shulim. Other ones, it could be dangerous. If it's matzat kabulis, without any chakira, is chaim kilcham. No one is in danger. You'll always remain with the same strong emina until the end. But those who don't have this type of emina, it could be dangerous at times. One of the shirim of the Klozim Gereva, he said like this, also explains in the Kaini V'Lakaya V'Saini. Every Yid that comes close to do the Avodas Hashem has to be misboin and think, make a cheshbon. Am I qualified? Am I the person that could stand to serve Hashem, to stand and say, Buich Atu Hashem? Is my actions, my maisen, Ritziyim on Hashem? Is it Ritzil Hashem? So who could say that his maisen is Ritzi Ba Hashem? But one thing is for sure. So therefore, in the beginning of the Shemon Esrei, before we even start, First thing is, what we say, Alekaini v'lekai v'saini lekai Avroam, and lekai Yitzchak v'lekai Yaakov. Because how would a person have the audacity to pick up his head and to speak to Hashem and say, Hashem Elekaini? What shaykhs do you have with this? Person who comes from Tippes Richa, from that drop, and where is it going to? Aren't you afraid to speak to Hashem, as we discussed last week? How can a person say Atu? Do you have Ahavas Hashem? Do you have Dvaikis Hashem? Do you keep the Bichakoisai Tailaichi? Do you keep Balachtu Bedruchov? The Dovku Ba'Hashem? How can a person have the Chitzpah and say Hashem Elekaini? The answer is Emes. We cannot. We don't have that koyach. How can I come close to Shemoneh Esrei and start speaking Hashem Sfusai Tiftach? That's my tefillah. Hashem, open my mouth and to say Baruch Atu Hashem. The answer is, since we start the Shemoneh Esrei with Elokai, Avisaini, Avroam, Yitzchak, Yaakov, we are the Zera Uvis Hagdoshim. They were the ones that of the Es Hashem B'chol Levuvam, with the full heart. So we have a schis. A Mussel, there was once his father who was very well off, and he left one son, and this one Nebuch, he didn't have the capabilities of taking all the money and producing to make it more, but he had that. Whatever the father left, this is what he had. That means the schis havaisov. He had what his father left him. What we have is, we have Avrom, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. With that, we have the strength of speaking to Hashem and start the Shemoneh Esrei. That's the introduction of the Shemoneh Esrei. Lekai Avrom, Lekai Yitzchak, Lekai Yaakov. It says in the Sfas Emes, in Parshas Lech Lechu. And what I would like to do, to quote several Sfurim Magdoshim that say on or about the same inyan, to strengthen this inyan, how important it is when we say Lekai V'saini, to know the types of these words, the purpose of saying these words. The Sfas Emes says, Ve'es Chulogoy Gudoil. Because of that, we say Elokai Avroam. Because of this, we have the ability to come close to Hashem and to daven to Hashem. They are the ones who put the seeds in each and every Eid that we should be able to say these words. And these words are also mentioned in Choyves Avuvis. It says in the Mabit, in Sha'at Tefillah Pariches, Gam sha'ain uni riem, to say these words, but since nisyachet ala avisaini, nisyachet gam ulaini, so we could do the same. They are the ones who started it. They are the ones that laid the rules. They said these words, so therefore we could, based on Avisaini, we could also say it. It says in the Rashba in the Chivas, Chaylik Aleph Simen, Tuf Chov Gimel. You know, the Gemara says, Yimeh Chov Ches. The Mishnah begins, Umalem Lahamenineh. Can we do the Avodah in the morning? Is it Allah Hashacha? So according to Masya ben Shmuel, he says, Hayir HaMizrach Atshi Megia LeChevron. It became light outside until Chevron. Why do they mention the word Chevron? Hayir HaMizrach. Yes, it became light, so we could start doing the Avodah. You cannot do the Avodah before. So the Yishalmi says in Peirik Gimel Lucha Aleph, Lo mihi oima Atshi Megia LeChevron. Why do you say these words? to bring up the schis of Avram Vesura, Yitzchak and Rivke, Vavisaini V'Mesaini. Before we start from Esra, to bring it up, bring up their schisim. He says, didn't Moshe Rabbani do the same thing in Parshas Kisiso Badaigu? Zechoyla Avram Yitzchak Yisrael Avodechu. Therefore, we say in the Shemin Esra, and the Kaini V'Lekai V'Saini V'Zoicha Echaz Dayuvois. We have zechisim, we have special zechisim. We have forefathers like Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yaakov. It says in the Pele Yoyetz, on the words V'Lekai V'Saini. V'Lekai V'Saini says is double. What's a double? The teva of a person is he loves the son of his friend, of his yedid. It's a natural instinct. This is my best friend. I have a special relationship with my friend. He loves his son. And the same thing goes both ways. If the son has the same ahava to him, then it's even stronger. That's a lekaini b'lekai of a sign. Goes both ways. It says in the Tanya, every Yid has a Shoydish HaKedisha that was rooted from the Uvais Hu'olam, from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Zeri Yisrael. This is an Ahava that is hidden in the heart of every Yid, without an exception. When it comes to Mesiras Nefesh, on Kiddush Hashem, every Yid is ready, no matter who he is, what he is. Even those who don't have any ruchnis, it comes to that point, that's automatically it was nishrash from our forefathers into every Yid. Says the Kozman Tzamagid, this is what we say in the beginning of the Shemin Esra, and Akaya Avruam, the Elakis, the Kedisha that was rooted Avisaini Atsof Kol Adoidus. That's how he explains these words. As it also says in Sfas Emes, there's a nitzitz, spark from Avisaini Agdoishim, the Chol Ish Yisrael. If a koyach zeh, with this koyach from Avisaini, we have the koyach to be makabel o malchus shamayim. Therefore, Birches Uvois is the beginning of the Shemin Esra, the opening of the Shemin Esra. Ayichle his dabik boy is burech aday masa uvois. Have to be mizdabik to Hashem through the masa uvois. It says in Tvei Shloimeh, in the Kaini v'Lekai v'Saini, in the Kai Avrom Yitzchak v'Yaakov. The Kai Avrom Lekai Yitzchak. Why is it mentioned double? The same thing we had in last week's parsha. Last week's parsha, the Pusik says Va'aydu el Avrom el Yitzchak v'Yaakov, and Hashem says Elu Uvais. Same kasha. So over there, I'll explain that first. We mentioned this on Shabbos. The Mendel Futterfuss, the famous Chabadker, mentioned that there was once the Slonim Rebbe worked together with Mahashab. In Agidus Ahavasachim, there was an organization, they worked together. So the Slonim Rebbe once sent Shlichus with one of his Chassidim to send a message to the Mahashab, to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he came to the Lubavitch, and he came into the Rebbe, and he gave over the Shlichus. So the Rebbe asked him, Zug nuch avrod, say a word from your Rebbe. So he said, my Rebbe said, Va'aydu el Avrom and Yitzchak v'Yaakov. Why does Rashi say Elu Uvais? So he teached Elu Uvais means, Uvo is a allusion of Rutzoin. Uvais is forefathers, and this week's Parsha, in Parshas Bo, it says, Lo Uvu l'sholchem. Paro doesn't want to let him out. So Uvu over there means Rutzoin. So my Rebbe said, it depends how strong your rutzoin is to Hashem. Uvois, allusion from rutzoin. Avrom, Yitzchok, Yaakov, uvois. If you have a strong rutzoin to Hashem, the kesher between Hashem and you pending your rutzoin to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Tefillah Shlomo says the very same concept on these words. His avisain is lushan rutzen. V'layuva neshalcham. Avisaini hagdoishim himshichi harutzoin. They will mamshech the will aldoiris habuim on the future generations to this day on every yid to be bakabel hakadosh baruch Hu's baruch shamoy kaburas al malchus shamayim. First elekaini v'lekai avisaini. The rutzoin. Lekai Avrom, lekai Yitzchok, lekai Yaakov. So Hashem says in another place, also in Parshas Lech Lechu, he says, I wrote many places, the avoidus ha'uvis, the doiros l'chol b'nai Yisrael, the nikri uvois. Because the mehis, the yisod of uvois is toil doisayim, generations, their children. Therefore, Avram Avinu said, Ma titani b'noichi if I don't have children, then what do I have? Without toldois. Now, even though we do find from the times of the Isaini Agdoishim, it wasn't always, you could say, an interruption, maybe, if we could say so. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu always had the Shechina, always had the Kisoi on Klal Yisrael. Even this man of Gulas HaShechina, says the Mabit. Mabit says, therefore we say, Lekaini v'lekai v'saini, because that in every generation, in any matzah, on each and every yid, we have the koyach from Avrom, Yitzchok, Yaakov again. The schisom nisyachet shamoy gamolayni. And their schis, his name is nisyachet anos. It never stops. It never stops. Always continued. And not only in the beginning of the Shemoneh Esrei, by Moedem we mentioned the same thing. Moedem Menach Niloch, kind of the same thing. With this koyach. With this koyach we begin the Shemoneh Esrei. That's the connection. The B'S Yosef asks, why Moedem is so important? Understand, Uvois, why Moedem? Teretz is, yes, Uvois, we also have the same koyach of Isaini Hagdoishim, just like Uvois. It says in the Medrash, Avrum hoye yiyeh. The Tamchen mention says the name of the Berachye, Shain oilam chusam mishloishim tzadikim ke Avruam. Every generation, the Chazal says, Lamadvuf tzadikim, the Medrash says, at least 30 tzadikim. So why do we always ask B'schis uvois and not B'schis the shloishim tzadikim? How do you can't compare the tzadikim of Avrom, Yitzchok, the Yaakov? Well, we do find that Rambam writes to his son that the Even Ezra was good oil beriach ka Avrom Avini, whatever that means. He had something like Avrom Avini. We don't know, we're not here to measure tzaddikim, the levels and the greatness. But why taka the Uvis HaKdoshim and not the tzaddik elyonim that we had in all the years? So I have here a sefer from Rav Feynman. He says like this: the malois. Emes. But if we do compare the koyach of tzaddikim of today in certain ways, so mention those names as well. And we cannot add anything in the Shemoneh Esrei, because this is from Anshe Knesset Gdoila. So he has a teretz why we cannot add the tzaddikim. The malis of Gimel, Uvois, V'emois, the Mura says in Bruchis Af Tezayin, Loi nikru Uvois Eile Gimel, Emois Eile. Uvois is not shaykh only by the 3 Uvois. Emois is only by the 4 Emois. Nothing more than that. Uvois V'emois. Therefore, we go straight to the source. The schis of those tzaddikim that are called Uvois. Also, Kadosh Baruch Hu kuras brisim moem with them, the Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov. No, you can ask a question: why Yitzchok and Yaakov? Isn't if the word is because Avram was the Rav? But here it says each and every of the Uvis Hagdoshim gave off of themselves a special cheshivas at different shleimus, and so he mentioned all 3, but we don't mention Imois. Although, there's a Sefer Midbar Kudaish from the Belzer Rebbe. They bring that the Sar Shulam from Belz once said that, Sikkis, the Spiesen come into the Sikke. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Ham, Yosef, David. What were their mois? He said, yes, they also come. That's what he said. So, Rivka, Rucha, Valaya, they also come to the Sikke. Not only that, it says in the Medrash Eichum, in the Psicha of Eichum, where Yirmiyah Novi went, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, and David before the Chorban Abayis. So the Medrash says, Koptza Rucho Mani, she jumped up and said, the Boine Shaloinam, look what I did to my sister Leah, and she davened for us, Rucho Mavaka Ubaneu. So we see that other women have the koyach, but the Anshe Knesset Gdoila, for some reason, they only mentioned in the Shemoneh Esrei Uvois. Maybe we could say it's nichlel in the Uvois, the Emuais Hagdoshim. It's their strength that helped the Uvois Hagdoshim to do the Avodas HaKodesh that they did. I want to mention a story, amazing story, from the Meilech that happened recently. This emphasized the discussions we had in the previous Shirim about not interrupting in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei. And we see in the Chazal, Sechtes Bruchos and Shulchan Aruch, that even a nuchash is around the person's feet, and not be mafsik Shemoneh Esrei. May in a whole shir, not have any terdis in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei. We spoke of many various things. So the story goes like this: this person lives in New York, and he has parents living in London, in England, and he visits them from time to time. It was one winter short day. He took his family, 3 children, from husband and wife, father, mother, 3 children. They took the flight to London. And the airport, as many times you have certain difficulties, various difficulties that we have. It could take a long time until you pass the front desk, until you go into the gate, and many things have to be done until you reach the final gate. And he came to the gate. I didn't have mincha yet. Short day, and they were so busy with the tickets that it took away all the time. As soon as I come into the plane, I'm going to daven mincha. Walks into the plane. He goes in a corner and davens mincha. In the middle of the Shemoneh Esrei, they announce that we're looking for a donor, 5 people, if they give over their seat to someone else, then they're ready to give $1,000 per ticket. I'm going to give up my opportunity. Now the Yitzhak starts working on him. What do you mean? You know what it means to make $5,000? In such a short while? At least show them 1 minute. And you'll finish Shemoneh Esrei. He fought with his machshavas, I'm not doing it. The lucha is not supposed to be mafsik in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei. So he blacked out all the terdis. And he ignored it, and he finished Shemoneh Esrei. So I lost $5,000. He said it would be perfect for me because I could leave the next day. I don't have to go now. When he finishes Shemoneh Esrei, there's another announcement. Whoever gives up their seat gets $2,500. That means $5,000 was for the tickets, he said, and $7,500 was the nisoyan that he had, that he wasn't mafsik in middle of Shemoneh Esrei. Says if I would have been mafsik in middle of Shemoneh Esrei, I wouldn't even know that I would be able to get another $7,500 if I finish Shemoneh Esrei. But since he finished the Shemoneh Esrei, and I made that second announcement, now he made much more. He made $12,000. So not always we see this immediately, but we have to follow Aluch Shulchan Aruch. You cannot be mafsik in Milush Shemoneh Esrei. That's not one of the things you can be mafsik. The Yitzhak Taka works on the person. He'll tell you 10 reasons why you should do it, but it's not enough. Shemoneh Esrei is something that it has to be said from beginning to the end without any interruption. So you heard the second announcement after he finished Shemoneh Esrei. Not only he didn't lose the 5, he also made another 7. So this explains and the kind of Lekai V'Sanya Lekai Avrom Lekai Yitzchak V'Lekai Yaakov. So just in summation, we say these words before we continue the Shemoneh Esrei, because the next words in Shemoneh Esrei is already mentioning the godliness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the midas, etc. First, we have to strengthen our koyach and midas Hashem. That's how we open up the Shemoneh Esrei. Once we are strong in both the midas, especially in the minute Kabulis, now we could start the Shemoneh Esrei and mentioning the godless Habayda, and not adding anything else, just what it says in the Shemoneh Esrei. The Gemara says you cannot add the word in good like Yiba Vanoidu, only these words. With the koyach of a minute Kabulis, we should be zeicha, and the tefillah should be answered.